25, breaks a couple of tackles, and look at him go! He could go all the way! Touchdown!
Winning is not a sometimes. It's an always. Winning is a habit.
What's up, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode of Gut Check Podcast. We're in the thick of things. Live sports are back. So, of course, I'm back with my good friend and co-host, Seth Floyd Hansen. How you doing this morning, man?
Just living.
You sound like you're just living.
Just living, man. No, I'm good. We're ramping things up with work and football. I'm back. The downfall of like being a teacher is also like the greatness of it, where like you love having your summers off. Like that's a really cool thing, but I'm feeling it as much as the students as soon as we like start back up. It's exhausting, man. So anyway, but yeah, football's getting started. I got 6 a.m. practice. Practice starts at 6 a.m. on Monday for the freshmen. So I'm going to help them. And then a week later, we start our teacher training, and it's going to look a lot different. Who knows what this year is going to look like school-wise, but as of right now, they're trying to do everything normal. So
yeah. So you're saying you get just as stressed out as the students if you walk through a Target and you see like the back-to-school signs and the school supplies put up?
I start like hyperventilating, and I'm like, yeah, maybe a little bit for sure. So,
but how does it feel? I mean, knowing you're a coach now at a practice at 6 a.m. versus being a player. I mean, obviously it's a little different. Are you less bummed about it? I don't know.
So to be honest, practice is much easier as a player than a coach.
Really?
I've come to find, yes, because and it's all the mental aspect of it is to me is easier because like you show up, you put your pads on, and you're told what to do, and you do it, and you try and do it hard and fine tune your craft. Coaching is like you are actively and emotionally leading all these kids for 2 hours, which some days is easy, but some days is impossible. Whereas a player, when you're not feeling it, you're just showing up and being told what to do and how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The coach, like you're so much more responsible for their energy level and stuff. So that's just hard. And that's when they talk about the grind in football, like that's what it is as a coach, day in and day out, trying to emotionally lead them. So, but it's fun. It's fun. The first week is never bad. The first week's always fun because you're not burnt out of it yet.
Sure.
so yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, man. I mean, anytime you got to lead a team and kind of develop them, that's not easy work.
Yeah.
For sure.
Plus, like they're getting to play football and I'm not. I'm just telling them how to play football. So, and football's the greatest sport ever made. So.
Remember that. But before we talk about more football, we got to hit on just everything that's going on now. So as I mentioned in the open, we're back to live sports. We got 4 professional live sports back now. So we got both men and women's back.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
That's Siri trying to listen in.
Siri's like, wait, there's sports back? What?
I didn't catch that. That's my Australian Siri, by the way.
I like it.
So we got both men and women's professional basketball in the bubble in Orlando. Baseball is back. No bubble, but no fans in the stands. And then, of course, hockey just kicking off with their round-robin playoff tournament in a bubble in Canada because they don't even want to mess with America right now, which who can really blame them?
The soccer too, which we've hit on multiple times, but they're in a bubble in Orlando still, right? Isn't it? Yeah. They're like on the same campus that basketball is basically. But
they are. I did miss soccer. They're into so they started first, ended off the MLS is back tournament, and now they're into their quarterfinals in a bubble in Orlando, and those have been some fun games to watch as well.
Yeah, I need to. I caught a couple of the round robin games. I need to try and catch the times for these next ones.
Yeah.
But
the Seattle team got eliminated already, so I kind of bowed out. But
you checked
but
out.
They made it out of the round robin or the group stage as it's called. So that's good. But Go ahead.
I was gonna say at least your hometown team went to the tournament.
They could make it, yeah.
I wanted to get into this so bad, and I was like, all right, FC Dallas. I'm just gonna plant my flag. Didn't even go. Didn't even show up. Chill. Thanks, bro.
Yeah. So much. Maybe next year you could try to be an MLS fan.
Yeah, hope so.
Wait a whole year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to just look at these different leagues right now. Some are in a bubble and the MLB isn't. So just starting right now with the NBA, WNBA kicking off in a bubble, a lot of work went into that, and it's obviously very difficult to pull off this bubble in Orlando. But so far in the NBA, 2 tests back to back, 0 positive COVID cases. So it looks like their bubble is working, and they're going to be able to, play their season.
Yeah, as long as Lou Williams will stop going to strip clubs to get some wings, like they'll be fine. But no, but the NBA restart was a huge success. Like you said, they were able to have no positive tests, and the product like on the court was not that bad. It's not. It wasn't going to be what it was, and you definitely missed the energy from the crowd. But they did a nice job of trying to make it, at least from an optics standpoint. No one cares on the court, but from a viewership, they tried to give some sort of sense of a home and away team. They're displaying like the banners behind of the home team, and they have a couple, I'm assuming, just quick replaceable logos on the court. And it was good. Obviously, like I caught a portion of the Jazz Pelicans game, which was really good. Pelicans blew they were up 13 or 14 at one point in the second half, and I left and I came back a half hour later and because I was going to flip on the Laker game, and all of a sudden the Jazz were up by like 2, and it finished really good, which weird. And I was listening to Bill Simmons, and I want to know your thoughts on this. So Zion is on a minutes restriction.
Yeah. And
why is he like, if you're on a minutes, if you're the coach and your best player is on a minutes restriction, why are you just burning up his minutes so early to where you're not able to put him in later in the game? Like, it just seems weird.
Yeah.
And Zion looked great. I don't know about this whole minutes restriction thing, dude. I don't know if I'm bought in.
So I would definitely argue against the minutes restriction. I get where they're coming from to an extent, but I wouldn't do it. One, to your point, like why are you burning up the minutes early and not later? I would just push back to say 2 minutes in the fourth quarter versus 2 minutes in the first quarter aren't the same minutes, right? So like, I mean, you're going to play a lot harder in the last 2 minutes. It's tougher, tough defense, right? Like, so that is different. You want them in those last 2 minutes, but I don't think you can weigh those things equally. Sure. That being said, I'm not with this minutes restriction right now. He's your long-term future. You don't want to break him. But at the same time, the only reason you're in the bubble right now is because of Zion Williamson, and you're trying to get into the playoffs. You guys are not in the playoffs right now at all.
Right. And they needed that game. They really did.
He's by far the best. I mean, luckily for them, the Grizzlies also lost, so they didn't fall farther back in the standings because they need to leapfrog Memphis to get in. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, you could sort of compare it to a pitch count, and with the most prolifically, the Nationals did it with Steven Strasburg. He was on a strict pitch count, and they shut him down for the playoffs when he was really young. And it took some time, but that worked for Strasburg. And then last year, you see he's a stud for the playoffs, and he wins of the World Series. But I guess it's that mindset. Do you win now? Do you win later? There is some health concerns with Zion, but I'm with you, man. You gotta play the cards you're dealt right now, and it's kind of about winning right now. He's 20 years old. He's not
only that, but they just had 4 months off or whatever. Like he's gonna be fresh. I don't know. I think there should be more flexibility in that, because I think that game probably does finish different if Zion's on the court. But I just thought it was interesting. I was a little surprised, and I guess maybe I shouldn't be, because when you take 4 months off, like, it's gonna be, you're not gonna play your best.
Yeah.
But I thought the Jazz would play better than they did, and then they finally woke up in the second half. I think the Jazz are a sneaky team to watch out for. Not that I think they're going to make a run at the finals, but they're gonna upset a team they shouldn't, I feel like.
Yeah, well, sneaky good. They're the number 4 seed right now.
Right, but I think they're gonna, however it lines up, like, they're gonna end up against, at some point, play the Lakers or the Clippers, and like they're gonna beat one of those teams or take them to 7, something. Like, that's what I could see. I really like Donovan Mitchell and what they're doing over there, but
yeah, and to add, it's not just 4 months off for Zion, but he also missed some practice because he had to go home, so he left the bubble. July 16th, came back, quarantined for a little bit, and then got like 1 or 2 practices in right before the games kicked off. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think, if anything, this first game was probably a wake up to those coaches saying, okay, he's by far the best guy we have. Like, we have to change those minutes. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, with that, so they're all playing 8 seeding games to try to work this out. Again, 9 teams from the west or from the east, and then it is 14, I believe. Is that right? 14 teams? No,
13.
13, yeah. 13.
Yeah, because it's
22.
Yeah.
From the west, all battling to get those top 8. And then if you are the 9th seed within 4 games, you can play a play-in game to get that 8th seed. And yeah, man, I watched the Mavericks Rockets game, went into overtime. Exciting game, good game to watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like that they got the camera courtside now, so you kind of feel like you can sit courtside a little bit.
Just sitting courtside, yeah.
Yeah, the sneakers squeaking on the court isn't too unbearable. I thought that was going to be pretty bad, like you're at a LA Fitness again with people running up and down the court.
Sure.
And they're competitive right away, man.
Yeah, it looked good. You can see the energy of being back. Like, everyone's pumped to be playing basketball again, playing hard, and it was good. Like, I didn't see last night's game, but I know I got a notification for the score, and there was a lot of high scoring. The Laker game was a good one. They were up, and then they kind of let it go in the second half, but that was just Kyrie doing Kyrie things. Not Kyrie, excuse me, Kawhi doing Kawhi things. Brought him back. And Paul George missed that shot, but they could have won that game. He had an open look, and he missed that last shot. I'm curious to see, do you think that starters will play all the way through? There's only 8 games, and I'm sure they will, right? Now that I'm saying it out loud, just because they need the time. Like, no one's playing. Their game isn't mid-season or end of the year anymore. They got to restart it. So I'm guessing even if teams are up and kind of out of reach, like, they're gonna still keep playing.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna look at that. I think maybe with Giannis, he's still pretty young. He could play a lot, but those are tough minutes that he gets because he's down in the paint.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of contested shots. I don't know if LeBron is going to play everything. I mean, he's definitely a guy. He's been in the league forever. He's older. He knows what he's doing. He knows if his body's ready. So I don't know that I would compete. But, I'm looking at it now. They're 6.5 games up right now on the Clippers. I can't see them blowing that, really. And really, maybe they do want the 2 seed right now. Just based on your matchups, right? I mean, the 1 seed's going to play maybe the Spurs, maybe the Pelicans.
Yeah.
Some tough teams. Those teams at 7 and 8, it's not going to be an easy matchup. And then Kawhi Leonard, he's known to be on a minutes restriction too. I mean, all last year, he kind of saved himself for a playoff push, and it paid off for Toronto.
Sure.
So I could see them doing the same thing there.
Sure. Did you think that the court was, like, I felt like the court was really dark in the background,
Yeah.
and then it was like a spotlight on the court, which I didn't hate. It just was like a different. It was an adjustment. It was kind of theatrical almost. You know what I mean? Like in a play where everything is dark except for what you see on stage, and that's kind of what it reminded me of. But I don't know. I mean, I think all in all, I guess as far as NBA, like I think it's working. I think it's gonna work. I hope that when playoffs hit, they are able to do more, at least on the broadcast, with like crowd noise and like fake crowd noise. Like that's like a big deal to me. Like that's in any sport, the playoff atmosphere and hearing that crowd on TV is just different. But for the most part, I think the NBA is doing it right, and they're gonna come out of this looking like champs for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely off to a good start. So who's your pick coming out of the East and the West right now? These don't necessarily need to be the most thought out and official. But
sure.
Right now, who are you feeling?
I think it's going to be the Bucks out of the East. I think last year, after being up 2-0 on the Raptors in the conference finals and then losing, like I think Giannis has an opportunity to really prove himself and not redeem himself, but he took a little flack for not being able to close that series. So I'm going to go with the Bucks. I think the Celtics look good too. Maybe it's because I just saw them play the Bucks and that was a close game. But and then in the West, man, I'm not going to not pick the Lakers. I think their toughest. I think the conference finals is going to be the Clippers Lakers, and that'll be a really good series. And the storyline of it too, about how Kawhi, I want to say Kyrie, Kawhi picked the Clippers over the Lakers, and all of that. You know what I mean? So that would be my pick, which is not I'm not hot take on hot take, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah, going all chalk on that one. I'll just say I think the Raptors still have something there. I think their coach is really talented, and he's getting a lot out of their players. So I would just say don't sleep on the Raptors, and I think they're going to be a tough team to play in the playoffs. Obviously, they lost their best piece from their championship run last year, but they still have a lot of talent. They're number 2 in the East, so they're making things work. I would just concern myself with who's really going to shut down Giannis. And the tough thing about Giannis is, you can stuff the paint, but he does have range. However, if he's off and if he doesn't have his range on 1 day, 2 days, whatever, it's really going to be hurting.
Sure.
So, I'm excited, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I'm most looking forward to that, and I love that. I hope. I mean, well, next year, assuming this whole deal gets figured out, like NBA should be playing this late again next year or close to, because their season's gonna start later. And I hope, we've talked about this before, but hopefully that becomes the new norm for the NBA, because basketball leading right up to football is the way it should be for sure. So
I agree, and start Christmas, start December, and then play into July, August. That makes sense.
For sure.
We will hit on quickly the other league that's going on in a bubble, NHL. As I mentioned before, they're staying in Canada. They have 2 hub cities. They're in Toronto and Edmonton, and they have 24 teams entered in right now, so 12 seeds for both Western and Eastern conferences. The bottom 4 teams are battling it out, and then they'll enter into an 8-team playoff for each conference. And I watched a game so far. I'm going to get into some more hockey now that there's nothing else to do, and I'm in dire need of all sports as possible. This one I was probably most concerned about. Without the crowd, hockey is such out and dependent sport, but it's still watchable. It's still fine. I mean, the product on the ice is the same. These guys are playing hard. They all want to win. So I mean, it's fun to watch. And again, no positive COVID tests for this bubble, so it seems to be working.
Yeah, hockey's great, man, and like you said, the biggest thing, the best thing hockey has going is that in every across the board, anybody who knows about hockey, who's like a sports fan, even if you're not a hockey fan,
Yeah.
everyone says the same thing, that there's nothing like playoff hockey.
Yeah.
And so they need to try and recreate that the best they can, because that's where the popularity of their sport lies, is it has this great playoff reputation. So whether that's pumping in more crowd noise or whatever, like to just kind of, like we talked about earlier, that would be good. But I watched a bit of I thought it was a scrimmage, but like a revamp game or whatever. But I saw something, and it was like the Flames and the Blackhawks or something were playing, and I watched about 20 minutes of it. And you're right, like it's you can watch it. I mean, none of it's perfect, and none of it's how we want it to be, but it's not so cringeworthy that you've got to turn it off. Like it's a respectable product. So good for them. And it seems like the bubble strategy is the most effective and might pay dividends in the long run. So
yeah, I just think the only knock on the NHL right now is I think their marketing department, and maybe that's part of ESPN not wanting to like show a lot of hockey because they think fans don't want it. But also like with TV contracts, I think it's hard to get some NHL games on to watch. Like I think they need to work, like now's the time to work on your TV contracts to get you on TV as much as possible. I think ESPN really needs to be showing more hockey, doing more of it. I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of it on SportsCenter right now, and like I know they have the facilities to do it. I know there's people who want to watch it, and again, like we have nothing else, right? Even if we're sort of coming out of COVID, so to speak, and things are opening up, people aren't traveling the country, going on trips and all that kind of stuff. So most likely we're at home looking to watch some sports. So you need to promote this thing a lot more. I
agree. It's weird. You would think hockey would be more of like an American sport, just given like we have history with the 1980 Olympics. Just watched that movie the other day, by the way, when I was in Idaho. Fantastic classic. But it's aggressive. It's violent at times. Yeah. It's very tough. It's just you could call it a manly sport, and that's like America, right? Like that's partly why we like football so much, is just the violence and the aggressiveness. So I've always felt that was kind of funny that hockey wasn't more popular. But if the major networks aren't making a priority, then that has to play a part in it.
Yeah, and I guess, half the country, so to speak, can't really be involved in hockey, right? Like you don't have kids growing up skating on lakes in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of leaves off part of the country. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, there's nothing wrong with hockey, so it checks all the boxes. We should get into it. And then quick shout out to the Seattle Kraken, which are kicking off next year. Sweet team name, sweet looking jerseys. So time to jump on that bandwagon.
Cool logo. The logo's pretty sleek. Yeah. And only matter of time. Should we debate which, because in basketball, you could just have an expansion team because the divisions don't matter. So you could just throw another team in there, couldn't you? And there's no way it wouldn't be the Sonics, right? Like, is there a scenario where Seattle brings back and has a different team than the Sonics?
Yes, and I guess just because
I haven't done any research on it, so I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
So that's
classic,
okay.
Right here, baby, all in the gut. What does my gut say?
I actually did look into this, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, they were the Sonics, so I think they still own that trademark and still own some of that branding. So you'd have to pay for that and kind of bring it back, because technically the Sonics as a team are still there. They just rebranded to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Sure.
So I don't know if a team that comes in wants wants to just say, hey, we're the Sonics again, like let's bring it back, or they just want to start this whole new franchise, create a new, a new thing. So
I'm just thinking because the Sonics have they won a title, NBA title?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but they've been competitive. I think so.
They've been competitive. They have a history in Seattle. It just feels like the people in Seattle are going to be like, this is weird NBA team that isn't the Sonics here, but I'm sure that they would support whatever team came back.
Looks like 1979 they won a championship.
But that's still significant because there's teams out there that haven't won one,
Yeah.
But anyway, I think the biggest concern, and probably why the NBA hasn't wanted to do it, is because you've got Portland right there. And I know it worked before, but all those people are probably Trailblazers fans now, right? Like, wouldn't you think? Or
yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mix. I think still there's a lot of people who have been in Seattle their whole time call the Trailblazers the Jail Blazers because of all the
there probably was like a rivalry
that
before.
They got. Yeah, so it's a big rivalry. Not a lot of people want to just jump on the Portland bandwagon necessarily. So yeah, I think Seattle's a growing market. They're getting a new arena for the hockey team, which will also be a basketball arena. The stage is getting set for an NBA franchise. It's just going to be a matter of, do they move another team, maybe like Milwaukee or something like that, like a small market team into Seattle, or do you just expand? So we'll see.
Let's speculate for 1 second on if they do change the name. Yeah. What fish ocean name are they gonna have? Kraken's already taken, which would have been cool. But I think Kraken fits hockey more than basketball.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think so.
I'm just trying to think. You've got the Seahawks, you've got the Mariners, you've got the Kraken. What is the basketball team name gonna be, Matt? The Guppies. That's a good one. The Flounders.
Flounders. I mean, it's got to be some sort like the Flying Salmon or something, right?
Yeah. I will become a Flying Salmon fan if they go with that.
I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, how
it
could
makes
you
the
not?
most sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So those are the big teams in a bubble, or the big leagues going on in a bubble that we hit on. But the other major league that is back is the Major League Baseball, and they are not in a bubble. It's been fun to watch their games. They're coming back with really no major changes other than they're just playing a condensed season. So they're now into a 60-game season, already about 7 games into that right now. And, I mean, those have been good games to watch, too. Again, more competitive games. Some have gone into extra innings. Fights have already broken out, as you saw between the Dodgers and Astros. And they're pumping in some crowd noise, which I think works. Yeah. And honestly, of all the sports, I think the baseball fans probably matter the least, I think, as far as like aesthetics and in watching the game go. I mean, you've seen all those summer like afternoon games. There's like sparse fans anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
have you seen? It's working. Have you watched a game on Fox yet?
I don't. I did for MLS. MLS was playing for Fox Sports, and I know they were pumping in some crowd noise.
Have you? But so turn on to it's Saturday. There's got to be a Fox baseball game today. Turn it on and watch when a ball is hit to the outfield.
Yeah.
And the camera switches. They're putting in. From MLB The Show, they're putting in fake fans that are cheering in the thing. Really? And I remember, and it actually was like super believable. The first time I saw it, I was like, wait a second, why are there people at the game? Like I was like, it was different than the cardboard cutouts, and I actually liked it because it tricks you for like a split second in your peripherals. Like you're like, there's like that movement in this stadium, and I actually really liked it. But then I watched the Giants on ESPN a couple times, and it was like there's nothing on ESPN, and so it's just a Fox thing. But I thought it was pretty funny and cool how they're able to do that like really fast on the fly. So
I think that is clever. And honestly, the cardboard cutouts kind of work for me in the same way.
Yeah.
Like, especially when they put them behind home plate.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at them. I'm watching the pitch, and the batter. But as long as there's that, something in the peripherals, it kind of works. It's weird.
Yeah, makes all the difference. I agree with you. The baseball's been good. The product at least has been fun to watch.
Yeah.
Last night, Giants got a big win, 9-2 over the Rangers, to the demise of my father-in-law, who not happy about it. But hopefully they keep it rolling. I mean, baseball as a whole, and the Giants too, which I have little faith that they will, but hopefully they do. They're 500. My buddy, who's the biggest Giants fan I know, we were texting about him, and I was trying to say, I was like, look, the playoffs are expanded. You've got, you know what I mean? You've got, I'm blanking. How many is it for each side? Eight teams from each league are making it, 16 total. And so I was trying to tell him, I was like, look, the Giants aren't winning the division, and they'd be shocked if they finish second in the division, because that's how it works. Is top two in each division are making the playoffs, and then there's going to be two wild card teams off of that. And I was like, look, they just need to be, after 30 games, if they are 500, if they're 15-15 after 30 games, like, they're going to have a shot to squeak into this thing. Because you're going to have a handful of teams. There's only 5 teams in the NL West, and there's only 3 divisions within each league, and 2 of those third place teams are going to make the playoffs and sneak in. So they can keep themselves alive. Anyway, this didn't mean to turn into a Giants podcast, but isn't that weird? It's just a weird thought in baseball. Like, after 30 games, like, you're going to be able to kind of tell if your team has a shot to be in it or not.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that, man. And honestly, I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of separation between teams after 60 games, so they just need to hang around 500. I think a 31-29 is going to look pretty good, right? 32-28, something like that, right? So if you're at 500, just right above it, you stand a pretty good chance. And it'll be interesting because there's bound to be a few teams right at 30-30. So I don't know how the tiebreakers work for that yet. It could be a head-to-head thing, or maybe runs for I don't even know. But it's going to be interesting, and they just need to keep it together, right? So they've already had 2 teams that have tested positive. The Marlins had a full-on outbreak, which was at least 19 players and staff tested positive, and then the Cardinals had a couple players test positive, so they had to postpone a game there. But you just see sort of the rippling effect already. The Marlins tested positive, so they didn't play with the Orioles. The Phillies just played the Marlins, so they didn't play. The Yankees, now nobody wants to go to Miami to play them, sort of rightfully so. The Cardinals shut their game down, but then you have to go back to who the Cardinals just played, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a little messy right now.
It's a bad deal. Like, if I had to take a guess, that this thing isn't going to finish. Like, they're not going to reach the finish line, which is disheartening, and I'm hoping they will. I hope they just eliminate those teams. I don't know. Eliminate the AL and the NL East. Just get them out of there and just move on. But I'm hoping it gets under control. But everything about baseball this year and handling this has been an absolute disaster, and how the confrontation between the players and the owners taken forever. They had a chance to capitalize and start earlier and like win the ratings and create popularity for their sport. Couldn't get it done. And now with this whole debacle of, I don't even know if debacle is, I shouldn't say debacle because we knew there was risk going into it. There wasn't a surefire way to make sure, but just everything that's happening, man, I feel my gut is telling me you've got another week or 2 of this, and then they're going to be done.
Yeah, it's a tough look for sure. Hopefully they learned, I think, from the Marlins case. The worst part about that is the Marlins had a couple people test positive, and then they played a game that Sunday, and I just think, like, if you have positive tests. Like, you just have to shut it down. And that's what they did with the Cardinals. So they learned from it. So that's some progress, and that's a little bit hopeful. And then you have to be prepared to just expand the season. Not more games, of course, but just
the time.
Extend the season. You're going to go into the winter, which is tough because the Yankees are going to be good. Red Sox are good. Like, East Coast, Northern teams are going to have to try to play through the snow or something like that. But I think they can figure that out. They just need to keep playing. There is some precedent for teams not playing the same amount of games and still getting into the playoffs, or just calling that whole season. It was in the 80s when they had a strike. Some teams played, a few fewer games, and then they just went off winning percentage.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. That just could happen. Like, they may not make up this Marlins-Orioles series that they just missed. The Marlins are not going to play like 4 or 5 games right now, so maybe they just don't make that up, and they're just down to 55 games. May not be a big deal because the Marlins aren't competitive, but it certainly hurts a team that's trying to make the playoffs and needed those like cush
games,
to get there.
So I know that they approved also that teams can play 7-inning doubleheaders, which is one way they're going to make this up. And depending on how it goes, they won't make up all of them. But if you have an extra day or whatever, you can play a couple doubleheader 7-inning games. Which, like, I love baseball, but I'm not a traditionalist when it comes to baseball. I would be all for baseball going to 7 innings all the time. I think I've heard that tossed around before, and I don't think it would ever happen. But I think that would be one way to help the sport a little bit. But.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of traditionalists, but I think I would say that's just a perfect way to handle doubleheaders, because you see doubleheaders a lot. You don't need 18 innings, back to back. Like, just cut that down to 14. I think the integrity of the game is still there at 7. You're maybe just cutting out your middle reliever, but best case you have a pitcher go 5 1/3, so to speak, and then you just have your closer come in for that, 1 2/3 or whatever. But
what's annoying about that, if people have issues with it, is the only reason they have issues with it is because that's not how it's ever been done before. Not because the integrity of the game. Because if they'd done this back in 1900, and they're like, this is just what we're going to do. If you play a doubleheader, it's just 7-inning games. Like, it would be like a cool thing about the sport is that you have to adjust to those doubleheaders. So anyway, so people need to be adaptable and flexible. Adapt or die. And that's baseball's situation right now in all facets. The COVID case, the way they market their game, the way they adapt to the younger generation, which we've hit on this podcast. Like, baseball now, you better figure out adapt or die, because you are looking to die.
Yeah.
So.
And you see the other leagues are adapting, right? Like, the MLS completely changed their season, and they came back with just a tournament. You got other leagues just in a bubble, like, completely changing their stuff, changing their playoff format. NHL doing the same in a bubble, changing their format. MLB expanded their playoffs, made a couple like extra inning changes and like roster changes, but I think they have adapted the least amount right now.
Yeah.
And hopefully they don't die because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not looking good, but fingers crossed, because we love baseball.
We do. So just quickly to wrap up, we're seeing all these leagues already go through the bumps and the hurdles of kicking off a league in a pandemic, and what that looks like. Now the NFL, of course, gets the benefit of being the last league to start. They still haven't been hindered really at all, and all the teams have reported for training camp now, with some COVID restrictions in place. But how do you think this league's going to look? I mean, is the NFL going to adapt, or are they going to die?
Well, the NFL is in a different position, meaning the NFL is king right now.
Yeah.
The NFL starts a little bit later, so the theory is that even though we're about a month away from kickoff for that Thursday night game, it starts a little bit later. So So theoretically, the COVID cases could decline by the time it starts. But just the nature and the persona and the reputation of the NFL, like I think they can get away with a little more because they don't. I don't know. I actually don't want to go there. I think I'm not going to go that route, even though I believe it. I think that they get away with more. And I think what's going to happen is there's going to be positive tests because you're not in a bubble. And realistically, you couldn't do a bubble for football. There's too many people. So you just couldn't do a bubble. So people need to realize that. It's not just the NFL like being irresponsible. But there's going to be positive tests, and like we talked about before, I think the NFL is just going to come out and there'll be pushback, and I'm not saying it'll work, but the NFL is going to come out and their players are going to sign waivers, and it's just going to say, hey, I know the risk. I might get COVID. Just like if I feel sick with another sickness, but I can play through, like I'm going to play through, and you got to get people to sign waivers. And if they don't, then they can't play. And that's what it's going to be because football, like aside from the quarterbacks, like you can go next man up in football. There are so many football players waiting in the wings, waiting for their chance that will play despite COVID. Like I know there's certain risks with it, but I also know the mentality of a 25-year-old football player is I don't care, I'm playing. Yeah. And I think there's ways to limit it. Like, look, it might be unpopular. Like I'm definitely not saying COVID isn't serious, but what I'm saying is there's higher risks for other demographics. So if you are playing, if you can convince these kids and they know like, okay, we're allowed to play if we have COVID, but the rule is I have to go straight from the stadium to home and I'm not coming in contact with family and things. It's just like a mini bubble for my personal mini bubble. Yeah. I think that's the route the NFL is going to take. And I think that there'll be pushback, and I don't necessarily think it would get passed by the Players Association to operate that way. But that's the kind of mentality NFL is going to have because the NFL, to them, in their minds, they're thinking, even though they'll never say it publicly, they're saying kind of what I said, like, look, the demographic of this disease or the people it's affecting most are not our guys. And most of these guys could probably play with it. Maybe not most, but a lot of them are going to be able to play with it. So I don't know. It's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough take on the NFL. I don't think you're wrong. I think the interesting part of that is if I heard you right, like you're saying, if a player gets COVID but they feel fine, they're going to be allowed to play.
I'm saying if you got if you signed enough waivers and basically just said, look, we are going to take a different stance. We're going to treat this like another illness because if someone had the flu, but they felt good enough, they're playing. Yeah. And so everyone's got to know the risk before the game. They're going to have people sign waivers. Again, I'm guessing they would propose something like that. Yeah. I don't think it would get passed, and I don't think that would happen. But the NFL's the last thing they're going to do. The very last thing they're going to do is call the season. They're going to do absolutely everything to get the season finished and through. So then that's going to be a possible thing because everyone's kind of thinking it, whether it's right or wrong. Everyone's kind of thinking, and it comes up like these guys are like great shape, very healthy, in their 20s. Like, why can't they just play? And that's what a lot of people are thinking. Now, the problem is when they come in contact with other people and then they spread it outside of them. But if you're just looking at what's on the field, like it's very tempting to be like, hey, let's just do this thing and quarantine if someone is too sick to physically go out onto the field. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. The travel aspect is what's so tough right now. And that's what we're seeing with baseball. As soon as the Marlins got hit, right, you had to shut down the other teams that they came in contact with, and it just has this domino effect. So I could very well see that with the NFL, but you're right. I mean, if they just decide like, hey, these are the waivers we're going to sign, this is the way we're going to operate, we're just going to play through COVID. It's not a great look for the NFL. So I hope they don't do it, but I'm with you. I wouldn't put it past them.
But
it's unfortunate.
So that's the difference between and like the NBA is winning the day right now, and they're at an advantage because they're at an advantage because the roster sizes is just smaller. But this is the difference between the NBA and the NFL. You just said it. Like, it's not a good look for the NFL. The NFL just doesn't care. That's how I feel, because the NFL knows, they know 100% if they put football out there, people are watching, whether it's a good look or not. Look at the protesting and the kneeling and stuff. Like, ratings, I don't know what ratings to believe for sure, but I know the NFL is doing fine. I know that the league didn't crumble because of it. And that's kind of how I view this. They would go through and people would be upset, but people are still going to watch. Yeah. Even the people who say they're not going to watch, they're going to watch. I really believe that. They might skip a week, but then they're going to go watch again because it's football and they love football. Yeah. And so, whereas basketball, basketball is just their mentality on PR and social, not social justice, but PR and how just the optics of it. They care way more about that than the NFL does. Yeah. And they kind of need to, because they're not king. They can't get away with a lot of it because it's just not as popular of a sport. Yeah. So that's why, look, like, I hope a full football season is played. But it's going to be fun and interesting to watch how the NFL handles this, because they're going to do just like what they did with the draft. When Roger Goodell sent out a memo, he said, look, we're doing the draft, and if you have anything bad to say about it, like, just shut up, because we're doing it. And that's just the mentality of it. And I don't know, man, I think Roger Goodell gets hammered unfairly. Like, I think he's a better commissioner than people want to give him credit for, even though there's been a lot of, like, changes to the game that people don't like and stuff. But I think he's done a good job so far. But
well, I think just the biggest knock on Goodell, just quickly, is probably, like, the way he punishes players. I think it's been sort of, like, unfair, wishy-washy, kind of inconsistent. Back and forth. Inconsistent, yeah. Best way to put it. But yeah, he's handled this COVID thing, almost flawlessly, I guess. In adapting to the virtual draft and things like that. It took a while, I guess, for them to put out clear guidelines for COVID. I think their main plan of action was, well, let's just wait for this thing to go away and our season will be normal. And that didn't happen. So they are going to have to adjust. I'm just going to be interested to see how it all plays out. I want there to be a football season too. I'm hoping it's not some bad optics where they're just having players drop left and right and just kind of pushing through. I mean, nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see people hurt and unhealthy. Yeah. A lot to see, a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, it's true. You're gonna get some football. Yeah. This isn't gonna not start. Yeah. It's just 3 or 4 weeks in. Like, what is going to happen, right? Because there's so many people on a football team. Yeah. I'm wondering if you could individual in each city do a bubble. You know what I mean? If that's an option where they're like, look, this is the team hotel. Yeah. This is it. It is what it is. Team hotel. We'll set up some more entertainment things at the facilities. Like, we'll bring in some more couches and things for the locker room. We'll set up more TVs and, like, more stuff for you guys to. But this is, you know what I mean? That would at least, because it's when you can go places, that's where the issue is. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if they they're like, look, we're gonna put you in a hotel. You want food from a certain restaurant? Let us know. We'll go get it. Like, we'll figure it out. Contactless, whatever. But I don't know. Like, but I'm. This is the kind of thing the NFL is going to come up with every possible scenario, because they're not going to shut this thing down until Dr. Fauci comes running in, claiming that the season is over. So.
Yeah, I think the biggest pushback with all the players is they don't want to be away from family.
They don't want to be away from family,
which I totally get. That's where the MLB, push back with the NFL. I like that idea, right? That makes some sense. You have your own private planes anyway. Team charter jets and stuff like that, and buses if you want it. So, there's no reason you couldn't just take over a hotel, go practice and stuff like that. But there's a lot more downtime, in between games in football. Obviously, you have your team meetings, practices, film, all that kind of stuff, but you have off days You have to
Yeah.
have off days. You can tell the players don't go anywhere, stay at home.
Yeah.
That can only go so far. We'll
Sure.
see what happens. That's a lot of players to control.
Yeah.
To tell them not to go anywhere, and it just takes one guy
to screw it up for everybody.
getting in. Yeah, so
it's
we'll
just
see.
one guy needs his chicken wings from the strip club. You go ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
It's messed up, dude.
Always got to get another jab at Lou Williams.
Dude, the best is Kendrick Perkins came out on, because he's on ESPN or whatever, and he was like it's pretty sad when Zion Williamson, a 19-year-old, is more mature than this vet who's been. And Lou Williams was just so mad on Twitter. He was like yelling at Kendrick Perkins. He's like, "Come at me, bro! Come at me!" It's so funny. Like, Lou, you got caught at a strip club, bro, in the middle of a pandemic because you wanted their chicken wings. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, as someone else once said, I don't think he went there for the wings. He went there for the legs and the thighs.
I'm telling you right now, if any of these sports gets shut down, I'm blaming Lou Williams.
Yeah.
And I will die on that hill 20 years from now. I'm going to be like, Lou Williams screwed up for everybody.
Do you think it has something to do with the fact that he's on the Clippers and you're a Lakers fan?
No, it's more about Lou Williams. When he played for the Lakers, had such a, and it's hard to blame him. He had such a bad attitude. He hated playing for the Lakers, and they weren't good. So, anyway, no, it's funny, dude. It's just hilarious. It's the funniest thing. So.
How good are these chicken wings now? I mean, it's
bro.
As soon as this pandemic's open, like, is everyone just gonna go for chicken wings to this place?
I'm gonna Grubhub them chicken wings from this. I'm definitely not going to pick them up because that's gonna. But I'm gonna Grubhub them. So yeah.
Insane, man. All right, well, we can end on that note then before we completely
derail this thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good to be back on the podcast. Good to be back with live sports. We just gotta hope MLB keeps it together and keeps pushing through. But in the meantime, enjoy the sports that we have now, and we will be back next week talking some more sports. Yeah.
It's been fun. At least, hey, enjoy it. We don't know how long it's going to be around. So enjoy it. If it looks like basketball will be around for a bit, try and get some of them baseball games in because it might be a year before you see any more. But appreciate you guys.
Yep. Until next time. Out. Strip club chicken wings, man. What are you doing?